Welcome to A Day in Her Life. I'm your host, Ellie Rinnick, and I am endlessly curious about how other women get it all done. I hope you all had a healthy and safe Memorial Day, and welcome to summer. On today's episode, I am joined by Claire Wiley, a mom to 3 kids, blogger, and avid gardener. Claire and I chat about a ton of stuff, including her days with 3 kids, her top 3 lists, how she got into gardening, and how the best days can be those where you don't overschedule. We also talk about the joy of letting your kids be kids and how we are both hooked on the Libby app for reading. I loved chatting and getting to know more about Claire's days and getting to meet another Ellie, her daughter, as we recorded. You should all check out her beautiful garden on Instagram. My black thumb is so jealous. I hope you all love this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. Thank you for joining me, Claire. Let's have some fun. Welcome to A Day in Her Life podcast. Today, Claire Wiley is joining me to discuss a day in her life. How's it going today, Claire?
It's good. How are you?
Pretty good. So let's jump right in. If you wouldn't mind setting the scene for us, fill us in on where you live, what you do, and what your family looks like.
So I live on the South Shore of Massachusetts. I'm about 30 minutes from Cape Cod and about 45 minutes from Boston on a good day. And I live with my husband, Caleb, my son, Jack, who's 6, my son, Liam, who's 4, and my daughter, Ellie, who is just shy of 2. I kind of forget months-wise. Once you get to 3 kids, I'm just like, she's over 1.5, but not quite 2. And I am a blogger, mostly hobby blogger. I definitely wouldn't say that's my profession by any means, but I'm a stay-at-home mom, and when I have a little bit of free time, I write down what we do.
You're also an avid gardener.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
So if you wouldn't mind, would you be willing to take us through a day in your life? So start with kind of waking up, how you get everyone out the door, and what your full day looks like.
Absolutely. So usually I would love to be the person that gets up before my kids and like peacefully enjoys a hot cup of coffee. But my oldest is a very early riser, and he always has been. And it's actually kind of nice. At first I was like, I just wish that I could wake up before Jack and like have, 5 minutes to start my day. But once he started kindergarten and he was in school full time, I realized that my time with him during the day was so short. And now I get up with him and I start my day with him, and that's like our one-on-one time. And he like will draw, or he'll, talk to me about what special he has that day, or, we just sort of have this like really special together time while I have my coffee. And that's usually at like 5:45 to 6-ish. Like he's already been up for like 30 minutes reading in his bed. So, by the time 5:45 rolls around, I'm like, all right, I'll come downstairs with you. He usually will have a little breakfast and I'll have my coffee. I'll write my daily 3, which is basically 3 things that I want to accomplish in that day. Today's, for example, I have to go to the post office. I am going to paint the ceiling in my hallway that I completely screwed up when I was painting the hallway, and I have to make my middle son's birthday cupcakes for his non-birthday celebration tomorrow. So I like to kind of plan my day out by the things that I need to accomplish, but also I put one thing on my to-do list that I want to do for myself. And while I'm so tired of painting our house, it's something that's really therapeutic, and I love the after is so, it's just like instant gratification. There it is. Like I see this sloppy ceiling that I painted, and I'm going to clean it up today and make it look really nice. So that's just sort of like a quick and easy thing for me.
We repainted our house. The walls in this house were like yellow in so many different rooms. I feel like it was just like the time, and everyone painted this like nasty butter color everywhere.
Yes.
And
dirty butter.
Yeah. It was Navajo white was in every single room of my house. And so I know the instant gratification, because it's crazy how much one coat of paint can truly transform a room.
I know. I was looking back at our Zillow pictures. I did like a before and after reel maybe last month. And I was like, our house just went on the market last year, like probably this week. And I remember seeing the pictures of this like cobalt blue rug and this dark trim. And Caleb was like, this house is so ugly. And I was like, I can fix it. Like, we can do this. And like, it's amazing to see how far it comes. So I'm like, all right, today I'm going to tackle the ceiling because I really screwed it up and it drives me crazy every time I go down the stairs. Then my middle son usually wakes up around 6:30 and we call him concrete feet. So the minute Liam's feet hit the ground, like the whole house shakes and like, Liam's up because he comes thumping down the stairs. And then Ellie usually wakes up around 7. We sort of do like a breakfast shuffle. Somebody wants something. It's like being a short order cook in the morning, which is, that's the one meal I'm sort of like, okay, I can give everybody what they want for breakfast because that's easy. My husband usually leaves the house by 7:15, 7:20 to catch the train into Boston. The boys get themselves dressed. My oldest gets on the bus at 8, bring my middle to school at 9. And then it's usually me and Ellie for the morning. We usually tackle some errands first thing in the morning. We'll do our grocery shop. We'll go to the playground, go to the park, go to the library, try to do something fun with her when it's just me and her because it's a little bit easier just to have that one-on-one time. But it's also so much easier to just like tackle one errand with her as well when I need to do something and try to get something done in the morning. She loves to play outside, so sometimes we'll kind of like tinker out in the garden. We'll like go check on stuff that's growing. And then I pick my middle son up at 12:30. It's like the fastest 2.5 hour, 3 hours. And then Ellie usually takes her nap, and that's usually when I power through the stuff that I really need to get done. That's how we built our garden. It was all during Ellie's nap times. We just were like, okay, she's a great napper. We're going to take advantage of every possible minute that she's asleep. And that's when I get all my painting done. Basically, any task that I need to crank out, that's when that happens. Today, that's when I'm going to bake the non-birthday cupcakes and paint the ceiling. What else? Then my oldest son gets off the bus at 3, like right at 3. They get out of school and he's the first bus stop. So that's kind of my tricky spot because like sometimes I'll have to do something in the afternoon. And I'm like, I just have to make sure that I'm back by the time Jack gets home because it's like all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock and I'm like, oh God, where did today go? And then it's sort of like the after school shuffle is always, it's such a delicate balance of like wanting to give the kids this time to just be kids and also like needing to get dinner done and finish up wrapping up any projects or cleaning stuff up. That's always the part that I'm like, okay, I did this great project, but now I have to clean it up. And I never want to do that. And that's always the time that I have to do it is when everybody's home and Ellie wakes up and, it's just chaos. I usually have the kids outside as late as possible. They're usually outside playing either on their scooters or bikes or on our playground or whatever until like 5:15, and then I can get dinner cooked and on the plates and on the table and all of that stuff. Then we do dinner, bath, pajamas, everybody in bed by 7:30. My oldest is teetering on like closer to 8 now, which is, I feel very grown up. I feel like all of a sudden he's like this big kid. And then my husband and I have like an hour and a half to just have a conversation, not interrupted. And we have a little bit of dinner. Sometimes we'll do dinner with the kids. Other times it's like we just want to be able to eat together. So we kind of take shifts of like some days we eat with the kids and some days we don't. And then I usually am in bed by like 9. I love going to bed. It's my favorite thing. I'm like, get in the shower, go to bed, take a hot shower. Oh, it's like my favorite thing. It's like going to bed early. And that's really my day. Then we do the same thing the next day.
What time do your kids usually eat dinner?
I would say this time of year, it's a little bit later. So I would say like 5:45 to 6:15. If they're enjoying themselves outside, nobody's asking me for a snack or nobody's telling me that they're starving, I'm like, let's push this as far as we can.
Yeah.
Because then if I do too early, then we get I'm still hungry. I'm hungry 40 minutes after dinner. And that is like, my boys eat me out of house and home already. I am like, I can't feed you anymore. I cannot feed you anymore. I have nothing else to give. So we try to push it as late as we can if they're content.
Yeah. I also, for my son, I have to have a snack in the car when I pick him up from school or there's no hope. No hope.
Oh, no. Sometimes it's scary because you're like, okay, I've already given you like 2 snacks. And now we're teetering towards like 4 o'clock and you're still asking for snacks. So I like, chuck an apple at them, or I'm like, here's a yogurt, that'll fill you. And they're like, my legs are hollow. What are you talking about?
What time does your husband typically get home?
He usually gets home around like 5:30, 5:45, which is really nice. When we were living in Connecticut, he was commuting into New York City. So I would often be by myself most nights. And so a big part of why we moved was this like new quality of life where like he was home for dinner for the kids. There's a lot of flexibility with his schedule that he can come home earlier some days. And that's really, really nice. So I would say most days he's home by like 5:45.
That's so nice. And even with you said he takes the train. Does he take the commuter rail rather than the T?
Yes, he does.
Sounds more consistent.
Yes. His office is right near South Station, which was a big reason of why we moved to the South Shore, because it was just like easy access to South Station. And he was like, my commute, again, because he was commuting to New York City, it was an hour to the train and then an hour and a half train ride into the city. So he was commuting like 2.5, 3 hours every day one way. And so when we moved here, people were like, oh, be careful, it's a long commute. And he's like, I will take this like 40-minute quiet train ride any day.
Yeah. I understand that. My husband's been taking the T and it's been just a hot mess recently.
Oh my God. I've heard.
Yeah. He leaves at 3 and sometimes doesn't get home by 4:30. And it's from here to Cambridge. So it should not be that long. I can drive that like there and back 3 times.
I was going to say.
Which is infuriating.
Yeah.
You mentioned your daily 3. Do you write those the day of, or do you usually prep those the night before? How do you plan those?
I mean, sometimes it's trickle over. So like I've had a load of laundry sitting in the basement for like 4 days that I'm just actively avoiding. And at some point I kind of get to be like, okay, I didn't do the laundry yesterday. That's going to be the first thing on my daily 3, because it's just, we're scraping at the bottom of the barrel here in the closet. So, but other days I'll be like, today I really want to paint the ceiling. I thought about it yesterday and I was like, I don't want to tackle that because it was a half day for my oldest. And I was like, I don't want to have all 3 kids home while I'm trying to paint. It's just a lot easier if it's just Ellie napping and Liam, tiddlywinking around. So, I mean, sometimes I kind of can anticipate what I'm going to put. And then other days it's sort of spur of the moment, whatever I'm feeling in my bones.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you love bedtime. What does your nighttime routine look like for yourself?
Oh, God. So when we first moved into this house, I fell in love with our downstairs bathroom. And there is absolutely no reason. It is not glamorous. It is not anything special. There's no like jacuzzi tub. It is literally just a stand-up shower stall. But I love this shower. The water gets so hot and it stays hot. And so I'm kind of turning it into my little like Claire retreat area. So this is my next project room. One of my things that I have to do today when I paint is I'm going to pick out a color. I was going to do wallpaper, but there's no ventilation, and the peel and stick wallpaper that I have in there is literally falling off of the walls because there's so much condensation on the walls. So I was like, okay, we can regroup. We'll paint it. I take a really hot shower. Sometimes I have a glass of wine in the shower, and that's like a really special treat. And I take my shower. I do my skincare routine. I sit in my lake pajamas robe for like 10 minutes after, and I just like decompress from the day. I'm not even usually thinking about anything. I'm not like mulling over any specific thing that has happened. I just sort of like let my brain shut down a little bit because, like there's always 30 conversations happening. You're always answering questions, tying a shoe, getting your headphones pulled at, like you're always doing all of these things that you don't even recognize that you're doing. And by the end of the day, it's just like, oh my God, nobody's touching me. Nobody's asking for anything. I can just be Claire for 5 minutes of my day. And so I just sort of like stand in the bathroom for 5 minutes after I'm done with my shower. And then I also usually am covered in dirt or paint or whatever. So it's like a nice way for me to like get myself really in the head space to like end the day, I do my skincare, put my robe on, get my pajamas on, and then I Caleb and I have been watching Succession. So that's sort
Mhm.
of like our last thing of the night. We watch Succession. I go upstairs. I read my book. A follower just told me about how you can rent book. I have like a dinosaur of a Kindle. And somebody just told me how I can rent books from my library
Mhm.
on my Kindle and it can send it from my phone. I like thought this was the most mind-blowing thing. So I've been like flying through books at night. It's just like the greatest thing just to like take care of myself, not have anybody need me, read something that's interesting and different and kind of takes me away from where I am. And then I'm usually asleep by like 9:30. I usually read like 4 to 8 sentences and then I'm asleep. So
What are you reading right now?
I am reading You Should Talk to Someone. I am loving it. It's so great. It reminds me of the show Shrinking. Did you watch that?
I loved Shrinking, and this book has been on my list for forever, and my nanny just finished it, and I was like, okay, I really need to finally read it.
It's really good. And it reminds me so much of Shrinking because it's this like parallel universe of like her being a therapist and talking about the experiences of her as a therapist, but also her in therapy and like what she's tackling. And it's funny and it's witty and it's like very poignant and you can connect to it on a lot of levels. It's very good. And so part of me is like, I wish I could read more at night, but part of me is also savoring it because I'm really enjoying the read.
I also have it it's on my Kindle right now from my library. The Libby app, I don't know what I would do without it.
I was using Kindle Unlimited and I was like, you know what? I like can only read so many of these romantic.
So many Brads. I love a good Brad, not gonna lie, but I share my Kindle library with my parents. And
Oh
so
yeah, you're
I
like
really can't download the
you can't.
the
Yeah,
steamy covers if my dad
yeah.
is reading his historical fiction and sees it with like the
You're like,
invasion of China. Like
well, it's funny because my best friend Nora will send me all of her. She's like a big romance reader, and she'll be like this one, and she'll like give me like the spice level, and I'm like, sometimes at night I'm like, I'm not in that headspace. I don't need to be there, and so it just cracks me up. So I'm like reading this book about therapy instead. So I'm like, you know what? It's great. I'm loving the Libby app. I can get my books for free. I'm not reading 100% spicy romance novels at night. And it's a great way to decompress.
yeah, I also listen to you can listen to audiobooks on Libby. I don't know if you're into audiobooks, but it's like so great to just what's available now and find one and just start listening.
You know what? It's so funny because I listened to my first audiobook. I had like, you know how whenever you buy an Amazon book, they're like, here's 4 million Audible credits. And I'm like, I don't even have Audible. Like, what do I do with this? And so I think truthfully, because since the rise of like phones and technology and all this stuff, I have had Jack's going to be 7 in July. And I just feel like I've always had a kid around and I've like never really figured out how to like listen to a book with my kids around. I don't know why. Like, and now I'm like, this is why I need AirPods because I can listen to books. And I listened to Stanley Tucci's book. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. I
Mhm.
get it. I like now I need AirPods so I can listen to these books. And it's now I'm on the audiobook
I
trend.
love the books that are read by the author too,
Oh
like
my
Stanley
God.
Tucci, Jessica Simpson, Matthew McConaughey, Selma Hayek. All of those are such good listens
You
because
feel
they
like they're
narrate it.
talking to you and you're
Yes.
like, okay, I love you even more now, you know?
Yeah. And the audiobook, I'm the one AirPod in while I'm cooking dinner and my kids are running around. That's my move all the time.
I gotta do it. Cause I'm like, listening to Stanley Tucci and he's dropping the F bomb, which like my kids are not, unfortunately, are not like shy to hear. But I'm like, maybe I should have this not in the tomato recipe that he's talking while I'm like cooking dinner. So I do have to get some AirPods so I can do that because I really enjoyed it. And I was like, I would be on a walk with Ellie. It would force me to go for walks with
Mhm.
her because I'd be like, I want to listen to my book and I want to like pop her in the car, over at the boardwalk or whatever, and go listen to my book. And now I definitely see the light behind audio.
What does your ideal day look like? Take me through how you would describe your ideal day and how often does it
Oh,
happen?
oh. I actually had one on Monday. Normally, I've been kind of in this phase with my kids because they are in school now, except for Ellie. And I'm realizing, especially because I've been home with my middle two the whole time, I worked with my oldest the first year. And I'm realizing how fast it goes. And in those moments where it's just so hard, it's so even hard to say this goes fast. Like, don't blink. But on Monday, I kind of needed a day to regroup and kind of like, we've had family in and out. We've been traveling. We've had lots of visitors. Our schedule has just been all over the place. And it's just been a lot since like Easter. It's been like a full month of really inconsistent weekends. And so I was like, you know what? I just need a Monday to like kind of dial back in. That's the only day of the week that Liam doesn't go to school. And so I was like, we just need a day to just be. And it was so slow and it was so peaceful because I wasn't rushing to get anybody anywhere by a certain time. Like Jack went to school, he did his thing. I had Liam and Ellie with me all day. I wasn't rushing to get home for Ellie's nap. I wasn't like scooting everybody along in this like perfectly planned routine that we all have. And it was just, it almost reminded me of COVID times because we weren't ever going anywhere. And we weren't ever in a place where we were just fighting against the clock. And I feel like that's my biggest bone of contention with myself during the day, is that I'm always going a million miles an hour to get people where they need to go at a certain time. So even on weekends now, because we have soccer and swim and birthday parties, it's like having a day where I could just start and finish on our own timetable is like the ideal day for me. Like Ellie goes down when she's tired, not by 12:30 on the button. Like Liam is in and out of the house playing. Jack is home tinkering around with his Legos or drawing. His favorite thing to do is like, if we're outside, he'll like bring his notebook outside and draw or write, or like bring a book out and read. Like I want that for them. I want them to be able to just feel this like unstructured, joyful childhood time. And it feels good as a parent and it feels good as a kid to see that and feel that. And truthfully, it just doesn't happen enough anymore. And Monday was a really hard look in the mirror for myself to be like, I am overscheduling the heck out of my kids and it's hard for them, you know? Hi. And again, I think with Ellie, it's so different because she, being the youngest and just always having to go where the boys go, and always like, she's just one more person that like has to come along for the ride to like get those things done. And so in some ways, like, it's great that she has a schedule and a routine, but in other ways, like, it's definitely a challenge of being the third because she doesn't get this time to just sort of like figure out who she is and what she likes to do. And for me, it's so nice to see my kids be independent players and independent thinkers. And it all comes from that place of like giving them that space of not overscheduling them. And so I think any day where we can just like have our own timetable, figure out what we want to do at our time. You know, I spend time in the garden. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe the boys are with me, maybe they're occupying themselves. But I think that's sort of like the ideal day for me, is like literally not having anything planned and just letting the day go, you know?
Yeah, those days can be so great. And
They
and then you look back at them and you're like, did I do anything? But it felt good. And that's what matters.
Exactly.
I feel that the rushing against the clock thing every morning to get my son to school, and it's something you can't change because he needs to get to school and I need to start work, but how do we figure out that balance of making it feel fun but also get where we need to go?
Exactly.
How do you make time for your relationships with your friends, with your partner during a given day?
So I think this is a little, friendship wise, it's a little tricky because, you know, I think especially as you grow, your relationships change so much with your friends, and your friends are kind of like all scattered. Like I have my best friend from college, I have my great friends from when we lived in Rhode Island, and, you know, my best friends from when I was growing up. And now I'm sort of in this place where I really, when I want to make it happen, I make it happen. When we were home in Connecticut for spring break 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm going to be halfway to New York City. I am getting on a train and I am going. And it's something that I need to do for my self-care, is to like be around my people who are not my children. Like I need to be around my best friend. Like we didn't have to do anything. I just needed to like physically be around her. So that's what I did. And my family and my husband are so supportive of that and really understanding. I am so extroverted and I like need that. I need that interaction in order to survive. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And this is something I've really learned about myself over the last, since becoming a stay-at-home parent specifically, because that's when I really started to blog and I started to connect with people, which is great to do through apps and DMs and messages and emails and stuff. But like, I require that face-to-face and
Mm-hmm.
I really have to make time to do it. And so I've really this year been putting myself out there in places like, again, going to New York a couple weeks ago by myself and going to mom's nights out. Like, I don't know anybody there. I'm just like putting myself out into the universe because I require that sort of in-person friendship.
Mm-hmm.
As for my husband, you know, he and I obviously, my job is connected to my phone. Like, I have to be on my phone all the time. And it's a blessing and a curse because, again, because I am so social and I do require that, I really enjoy being able to have those conversations with people. But it's also really hard for me to shut off like everybody. And so, what my husband and I have been doing really since we moved in here, because he's home more consistently, we have like phone free nights and we'll go outside and sit by the solo stove for like 2 to 3 hours and we'll leave our phones inside and we'll just like talk and just it doesn't matter about anything. Could be about work, could be about, I don't know, what we did that day. Like all of a sudden it's 2.5 hours and we didn't even realize it because we were having such a good conversation. We don't do a lot of date nights. We don't have a babysitter yet. So like we try to make that happen at home for us. Like we really try to get the kids down and just shut off and go have some special like one-on-one time together. And that really makes a difference in, you know, eye contact and like real conversation, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
not having your phone buzz or beep or ding
Or
for
a
two
kid
hours.
throwing
And it's,
something at you at the
yeah.
table.
Yeah. And like when we first moved here, it was honestly because we didn't have any furniture. We put our couch from our old house in our basement. So we were waiting for our new furniture to arrive. And we're like, well, we have our outdoor patio furniture. Let's just go sit by the fire. And every night, that's what we would do. And we'd kind of like talk about all of the ideas we had for the house. And like, we realized how much we enjoyed it. And then once we got a couch, we would sit all winter by the fire inside. And that's like what we would do. And then we've now shifted it back outside. And it's been really special to kind of like add that into our routine, like as frequently as we can.
I love that. We usually eat dinner with the kids, and we've started on the weekends choosing one night and eating after them, which
Yeah,
it's sometimes it's just the same food heated up after, but you're talking and you're not having children
exactly.
interrupt you.
And like not having somebody like take something from your plate and
Mm-hmm.
like you can enjoy a meal that you've made in a way that's like it doesn't have to be this fancy like takeout meal or fancy like out to dinner restaurant. It's just like being able to enjoy your meal with your person is so it doesn't happen. It's like this the overscheduling thing. It just like doesn't happen enough. And so like
Mm-hmm.
really carving out that time feels really good. It's like a nice shock to the system.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you outsource in a given day or week? Do you grocery shop? It sounds like you were mentioning that you go grocery shopping, but like grocery shopping, cleaning, are there things that you outsource in your life that couldn't do without?
You know what? I actually was just saying this to my mom when she was here this weekend. I wish I could outsource somebody to do my laundry for me because I hate doing laundry. I don't mind putting it in the washing machine, but I just hate folding it, putting it away. It's just so annoying. Currently, I don't outsource anything. When we lived in Connecticut, we had a cleaning company that came like once every 2 weeks and did like a really deep clean. And oh, that was just like so nice. It was just like such a treat. But right now, I don't outsource anything. And I was thinking about what's something I could take off my plate. I used to do Instacart, but because my husband works for Trader Joe's, we get a nice discount when we shop. So I have to shop in store, which is fine. Um, one thing that has made my life a heck of a lot easier is using the bus, the school bus.
Mm,
Having one less person to drive physically to school and pick up physically at school is something that like at first it tore at my heartstrings. So I was like, oh my God, you want to take the bus? You don't want me to drive you? And then I was like, oh my God, thank God you want to take the bus because I don't have to get out of the house and sit in car line. And like, how many wasted hours did I sit in the public school car line? Like so many. Parents get there like an hour early. And I'm like, how? What are you doing? How do you have time for this? So I say like the public school bus is really my only outsource and it's great.
We are not there yet in school age wise, but I feel like a whole new world opens when they start elementary school.
Does. It does. It's a great thing. It's great. But it's a lot, but it's great.
How do you make time for creativity during your day?
That's part of why I started my blog actually. You know, I think as a parent, so much of my life is given to my kids. So much of my day is given to my kids. And I really wanted a way that I could sort of like document how I go inward and how I take care of myself. And for me, that is like being creative and like either painting or being in the garden. The garden is really like, I feel like I'm making up for lost time because I didn't get to garden at all last year. And now I'm just like, that's a place where I can do really great thinking and I can find this really good version of myself because it's all trial and error and things are going to work and things aren't and you're going to kill stuff and things are going to thrive. You're going to find the things that you love to plant compared to what other people do. And it's like, I just make time in my day. Like I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't like when I have 5 minutes to myself, I'm not like, if I lay down, if I take a quiet minute inside, like that's it. I'm done. Like
that's enough.
That's it. Like that's good. I gotta like keep moving and I gotta keep like actively pursuing it because it makes it like fuels me to do more, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool for me again because I've what I do on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, getting that direct feedback that people are inspired to garden because of what I've shared or like that they never thought that they could do it and then they tried a small little bed or they planted a couple seeds and they like fell in love with it. Like that is such a great return for me. Like it's really cool to share something that I love doing and fuels me and help people find that to fuel them too.
Your garden is so beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
It is aspirational garden goals.
Thank
just
you.
the structure even. How did you get into gardening? Was that something you knew it from an early age that you like loved doing with your parents, or like how did you get into it?
Yeah. So growing up, my mom always, where I'm from in Connecticut, there are like 3 pretty primary gardens that are kind of like locally renowned. And my mom actually, when she met my dad, my mom's from New York State. My dad is from where I'm from in Connecticut, in Litchfield. My grandma said to my dad, oh my gosh, you're from Litchfield. That's where White Flower Farm is. Like I've always wanted to go there. So my dad was like, yeah, okay, like what? When you're from there, it's like doesn't mean anything to you. But like my mom taught me and my grandma taught me from such a young age about this love of plants and this love of nature and being, you know, outside and again, trying things out. So I kind of always enjoyed it. And then when my husband and I bought our first house, we bought it in October. And I remember kind of like looking outside at the gardens that the previous owners had had. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I can't wait to see it bloom. And then in it, I had like roses and peonies and these giant hydrangeas. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. Like, let's, you know, work through this. And every year it just built and built and built. And I just fell in love with it. And then 2020 happened. I found out I was pregnant on March 15th of 2020. So literally the day the world shut down. And I knew that I wanted to like be outside and garden because that's like all we were doing. You know, I wanted to like build these beds. So my husband built me these 2 raised beds outside of our house. And he was like, okay, this could go one of 2 ways. Like we could have a lot of flowers or we could have no flowers. And it just blossomed that summer. And I had a miscarriage that spring, and being outside and being in the garden, like kind of like figuring out my planting plan, that was really how I healed from my miscarriage. And it was not only a like hard experience in itself, but like I was by myself because it was COVID. My husband wasn't allowed to come with me. I had like crazy, weird complications because I had to my doctor was like, don't go to the hospital because I don't want you to get COVID. So I had to do the procedure at home. It was just a whole thing. And it was just a really great way for me to kind of process the situation that had happened, process my experience, and also kind of sit with it a little bit because it was really hard and it was a really awful time to be alive. It was COVID is scary and hard and nobody knows what's happening. So kind of let me be in this space of quiet and being able to really sit with everything. And I realized how comfortable that was for me for the first time in a really long time. And, then I got pregnant with Ellie and we built another garden, and then we moved and built another garden, and it just became this thing. And it's really cool because Liam was Ellie's age when we first started gardening. So he was 18 months old. And now seeing him interact with our garden, and that's all he knows. And that's the coolest thing because he goes to school and they're building a garden at school, and he knows how to deal with the baby plants, and he knows how to transplant things, and he knows how to take care of sprouts and how to water. And he's not doing it because he's trying to be a know-it-all. He's doing it because he genuinely loves it and he knows what comes out of it. And that turn of effects to have him see how much I love it. And now I think about how this conversation started, how I saw my grandma and my mom love it, then my kids see me love it. That's how it's passed down. That's how the whole thing is continues to grow generation to generation.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Do you mostly do flowers or do you vegetables too? Or what's your passion in the garden right now?
I love flowers. That's where I started. And I just feel it's something that I would buy myself. It's something that on a bad day, that's where I go. I'm Trader Joe's flower section. Yes. And I was you know what, if I love these so much, why don't I try growing them? And that's what I started doing. And every year I try a bunch of different varieties. And I really cater my taste buds, my floral taste buds to different things every year. I do grow vegetables. I have a very vegetable picky husband. He will be the first person to admit that. And I'm not a big zucchini gal.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a lot of gardeners are ooh, zucchinis,
Yes.
squashes, pumpkins. And I'm
Yep.
it tastes doesn't do it for me. And I can grow them, but nobody's going to benefit from this except for the wildlife that I throw it into the woods. So what I did this year when we planned the garden was I have my two primary beds, which are for dahlias, which are what I really, really love to grow. And again, I'm rebuilding my collection of them because when we moved, we had a weird overlap of when we closed on our last house, our movers came, and then when our movers came again. And so most of my plants were living at my mom's house. But I was my dahlias, I can't plant quite yet because I don't have anywhere to put them. I don't know what the soil is like when we go to our new house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure what to do. So long story long, apologies as usual.
No,
I gifted basically all of my kids' teachers last year all of my dahlias so that they could go to somebody who would love them and plant them and enjoy them. Think of, Jack as a student and stuff. So I'm rebuilding my dahlia stash this year. Then in the middle of the garden, we have veggies. So I'm doing cucumbers, tomatoes. Ellie and I are the only two people that like tomatoes. So I tend to go a little overboard with tomatoes because I love them so much. And then I have 4,000 tomatoes that nobody eats. So I'm doing one bed of tomatoes, a lettuce bed, and then I have snap peas. So I let the boys kind of pick things that they would eat. And again, every year it will probably tweak a little bit, because the beds are so deep, we may be able to do overwintered carrots or Brussels sprouts or something else. But my primary focus is flowers because that's what I personally get the most enjoyment out of.
That makes a ton of sense. I have a black thumb, so I always look admiringly at your garden and your growing and think one day maybe my husband will keep something alive for me. So Claire, where can people learn more about you and follow along?
So I would love to say my blog, but I literally go on there twice a year right now just because life is hard. And I would mostly like to be, outside in the garden instead of writing on my computer sometimes. I would say Instagram and recently TikTok. I have just joined the TikTok wagon and I am all aboard. But those are probably the two places that people can find me the most.
Awesome. And then what is your absolute favorite part of your day?
Ooh. More recently, what my kids have been doing after school is we have a really big backyard. And when Ellie wakes up and Jack is home and Liam is home, they just like make themselves busy and play together really nicely, way better outside than they do inside. And the last couple days, they have all been playing together and like coming in and out of the garden and like talking to me and telling me about their day, but then playing together and telling each other about their day. And it's just like this really special bond that the three of them have that I've really seen come to light at like from the hours of like 4 to 6. It's like a really beautiful time for them. They're just to like observe their friendship and their relationships really like click and bond and like see them take care of each other. It's like it's really special. It's like the coolest little thing.
That's so sweet. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for being on the podcast and for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.